Welcome back, everybody. Grant Beavers here from OpenLearning again. Thank you for joining us in this particular session. And I hope you enjoyed that last session. Magnificent conversation going on there. And as we said before, all of these are being recorded, and we'll make sure that we try and get to as many of those questions and comments that you posted there as well. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Asheley Jones, who's the Chief Operations Officer and Head of Product for DeakinCo, the commercial arm of Deakin University. She's also the head of the Council of Professions Australia Education and Accreditation portfolio, and is a member of the TEQSA Register of Experts. Asheley has been doing some amazing things at DeakinCo, and our conversation today, or our presentation today, is focused on lessons from an early leader. We wanted to make sure that during the day you got to hear from organisations that are actually presenting, producing, developing micro-credentials, who they're presenting them to, and the journey that they've gone through in presenting that to their particular audiences. So without further ado, I'll bring up Ashley's presentation, and over to you. Over to you, Ashley.
Thanks so much, Grant. And look, first, I'd just like to reiterate what you've just said. Great discussion so far. Beverly did a great job in opening the scene, setting the scene, and that panel session was just absolutely brilliant on, what industry needs from micro-credentials, and how industry and education are going to have to work together to meet the needs of current education and also those working from 2030. So let's see what I can add.
All right. Can you see that?
Yes, I can. So we're having slight technical difficulties. So Gavin is going to be my driver. Thank you.
No worries.
Next, please. So I thought I'd set the scene just by showing the kind of things that I'm going to talk about, which Deakin started in 2014, so very early adopter, and look at the ways in which the model was put together. One of the things I think that really came out from the panel was the types of assessment, and so I'm hoping to be able to show you the ways in which Deakin has embraced that, and look at the ways in which we've moved from 2014 to 2020 and how we're looking at going forward in the future. The new types of capability standard builds that we're looking at, the taxonomy of the metadata around the badging that we're using, the portals that we've had to put together, end-to-end and the end-to-end solution, and where to for 2021, and questions if we have time. Thank you. So the model, without further in 2014, which is the next slide, please, Grant, the intent was to build a capability framed based credentialing model for non-consumers of traditional postgraduate education. So yes, initially it was very much, let's look at ways in which we can get those that are already in the workforce to embrace lifelong employability through lifelong learning, and to be able to give them the ability through outcome-based assessment to have a formal recognition for skills and capabilities that they've already developed in the workforce, and that they don't have to sit in the classroom to relearn stuff that in fact they're already very, very skilled at. So next slide, thank you. As I say, the justification of that demographic audience was getting them back in to look at upskilling, but given busy lives and financial considerations of the cost of a master's from end to end, and as I alluded to, the lack of a formal recognition of existing expertise. In some cases, those sitting in the classroom have far more experience and skill capability alignment than those that are teaching them in particular areas of courses. Thank you. So we, as a result, came up and look, Deakin was primed because of a very great powerhouse couple, namely the VC and DVCE at the time, who recognised the ways in which this could be put forward. So we actually had the luxury of starting from building a complete ecosystem as opposed to trying to fit maybe apples into oranges or other ways to go. So the resultant degree formal awards were those that you can see up there. So from 2016 to 2019, graduate certificates and masters of leadership that are stackable through micro-credentials with capstones and research elements attached to them. So 14 units, 10 of which is a micro-credential, were born. And so that's really the vision, where we were going, and then we achieved that. And then, of course, the next thing was, well, where do we go now? And what are the lessons learned? So next slide, please, Grant. Okay, so, you know, big tick, we got a successful take-up of those degree pathways from multiple hundreds of professional practitioners. And it's been quite remarkable, the types of people that have taken those up. Professionals, some with 10 years standing, some with 20, some that have pivoted careers, some that want to take on a completely new skill alignment, so proving what they are actually doing in the job but actually don't have recognition for. So that's been incredibly successful. But recognition along the way has been that the demographic is far larger. You know, schools, for example, with ATAR alternatives, we're talking to several university admission centres about the ways in which those that perhaps have left without a successful ATAR have gone out and worked in retail or hospitality, have amazing skill sets that they can then be able to articulate and have assessed, and be able to move into, whether it's VET RPL or bachelors and graduates within the higher education system, or whether it's a skill set. Going back to what Jenny was talking about, you know, what is it that actually wants to be captured and that wants to be assessed and skills capability proven? And then, of course, there's the global market, because skills are skills no matter where you are, and the ability to be able to benchmark those across different capability frameworks, which I'll get into, given that some of the conversations that happened within the last group. Yes, please. So we had to start with the structure, and it has to be pinned around something. So what we looked at were education and industry frameworks that, thanks to the VCE, were aligned to graduate learning outcomes, in order to be able to benchmark where things are going to sit and how you can then align them with other areas. Also included were stratified systems theories, and we chose 5 levels of work. And look, we actually landed on foundation, proficient, practitioner, advanced and expert as our levels, although they are aligned into the AQF, as the next slide will show. And also Dreyfus and Dreyfus's models of skills acquisition, because those dimensions of how you're operating within the workplace, the types of autonomy you have, the influence and complexity, which is of course a nod to another skills capability framework, the skills framework for the information age. So you can see all of that's been considered, and those they've fed into the design of the Deakin micro-credentialing frameworks. Please, Grant. So also IBM Watson was used, machine learning, to validate the core capabilities that were identified, and an analysis of 60,000 job profiles to align to both current and future levels of skills acquisition. So a very similar type of learning as could come from Fathom or Burning Glass, looking at what is required in the future. As I alluded to, an alignment to the Australian Qualifications Framework at 5 levels of proficiency, 3, 6, 7, 8 and 9, rather than the full stack, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Again, a skills framework for the information age, and Engineers Australia chartered competencies. So you can see really trying to, at the time, the CANS and CPA frameworks went around, but we were really trying to make sure that there was a total alignment to the ways in which all of these frameworks could influence what kind of skill capture, but more importantly, the assessment that we could then conduct in order to be able to prove skills capability. Thanks, Grant. So sorry about the size of this one. This is a comparative alignment to various qualification frameworks. And I'd like to call out my colleague Jane Fay on this, who actually did a huge amount of work in mapping to ensure that all of our levels resonated at various different areas around the globe. And given that Deakin is working in India and has been for 26 years, it was very important for us also to align to the Indian National Skills Qualification Framework. And then you can see at the bottom there, we've also got, again, those work levels of capability: individual, team, operational, functional and strategic, to be able to determine if you're sitting in an expert, which is masters aligned, what kind of strategy are you implementing within the business to be able to prove skills capability. Thanks. So this is the professional practice credential suite at the moment. We've really built it out. Human-centered skills, or we're now tending to call them employability skills. Then we have the leadership skills that we've built that are really resonating with industry, and I'll talk about those in a moment. And then what's happened over the last few years is a requirement to actually build out that technical knowledge space. Financial literacy and financial acumen have really resonated, as has digital learning and the base of data analytics and business intelligence. And also marketing. Marketing has been a huge cry out from those operating in industry. Thank you. So what did we learn from the builds? Okay, as I mentioned, we've had to capture and amend our nomenclature to ensure that we actually can show early careerists through to expert practitioners' capabilities. And the 5 AQF levels rather than 9 have been validated, as the AQF review, recent AQF review has shown that a collapse is probably a really good idea, given the types of granularity or lack of that you have between certain elements of levels. The complexity of the model has certainly been justified. It's resonated through industry, and so we've retained those dimensions of autonomy, influence and complexity that validate skills capability when our assessors look across assessments. Importance of pilots, really important. We are, you know, the integration, and going back to Beverly's point, the need for industry and education to work together to be able to ensure that credentialing standards meet the needs of employers is, you know, without that there's no point in what we're doing. And the importance of mapping and aligning to AQF or an equivalent. So it doesn't have to be AQF, but it does have to be a standard of some kind. Otherwise, how do you iterate, or how do you build? How do you recognise like for like? How do you actually build a skills global passport that I think one of the panellists alluded to? Thank you. So we come to our outcome-based assessment, and this is, the Deakin model is very unique in this this area. We have a double-blind candidate assessment. One assessor is an academic Q+1, so that they can feed into formal awards, although a number of our assessments are actually to benchmark or to prove capability within a particular industry or for a particular type of job, a skill that's required. And then the second assessor is an industry practitioner, and we allow 1 resubmission per assessment. Heavily based on reflection, so that candidates can understand why they are operating at a particular level. And there's 3 to 5 criteria against each of the levels, and an evidence submission of 2 to 3 pieces is required to show that you're meeting those criteria at the appropriate level. We did start with criteria where you had to meet 3 of 5 criteria, perhaps 2 were mandated and 1 was optional, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Synchronous video testimony, so everybody can shudder and go, how on earth are we going to scale that? And customised assessment rubrics. And again, because of the expertise of the senior university team, those customised assessment rubrics, we probably spent a good year teasing out what they would look like and how they could then be used and iterated across different levels. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a very quick flash of the credential journey, candidate journey itself. It's delivered 100% online through our bespoke systems. And you register, you collect your evidence, you write a reflective testimony within our credential portal, and then you submit your evidence and reflective testimony, conduct an asynchronous now video testimony, and that is packaged and sent to the 2 assessors, and as I said, they assess that blindly and then determine whether you're sitting at the particular level, and then you get awarded the credential if in fact you've met that requirement. Thanks. Next one. Pivotal, of course, is the assessors, the role of those. As I mentioned, we've got an academic and an industry. and they need to agree the alignment of the skills, capability, and importantly, at a metacognitive level for the individual that's being assessed. They do provide very granular candidate feedback so that candidates know exactly why, if they were awarded expert in communications, why they were awarded, what it was that resonated that they met that criteria, and also something that they can then use because they've been blindly assessed by two independent people that they had never met, and know that their skills been validated. That the assessors also, through a community of practice, input into the assessment rubric iterations to make sure that we're continuously improving those. They mentor new assessors, we work together on moderation practices, and they also have significant input into the calibration of credential criteria modifications that I'll talk about in a moment. Thank you. So, both assessors have to agree on one of a couple of possible outcomes. They either both agree that the selected credential at the relevant level and they award it, or they can award at a lower level. And that goes back to the idea that if you are operating in an expert level, a master's aligned, you actually need sufficient seniority to be actually helping set the strategy of the business. And so if you don't have that, you know, you can assess yourself as many times as you like. If you're one level down, which is helping to coordinate that type of strategy, then they would suggest that level indeed. And then alternatively, if after one resub you don't meet either of those, then you will be unawarded, but again, given very granular feedback on how and why you have failed. In terms of governance, it all falls under the Deakin University Academic Policy Library. Thanks. And Lenora, I'll get to the scaling assessment in a second. Thank you. Okay, so lessons learned. Blind candidate assessment really resonates in the market with both those that are assessed and employers. The tacit and explicit knowledge of candidates that's actually brought out is also very empowering for the candidates. And we've now fixed the rules of submission evidence so that all criteria need to be met. And that has made it very clear to candidates and also to assessors that those are met. That said, we've now got a credential that is going through financial services, and we're going to have to put in some hardwired exceptions, and I'll explain that in a moment. And Leonora, we went from synchronous to asynchronous video testimony, and as a result of that, we have reduced our timings. Our bespoke platforms have now, we're in iteration 3, and we've actually reduced assessment times from an hour per candidate to around 25 minutes per candidate. And given that we can do 24/7, we've been able to scale up our number of assessors. And so consequently, we've got people working, you know, dependent on where they are, 18 hours of the day, and they can pick up stuff as and when, and they can also indicate how many assessments they'd like per week, or, you know, take time off. So that's all included. Thanks, Grant. So the next slide shows industry pilots and the capability validation that we undertook, because it doesn't look like that slide's moving on. So what did early pilots include? Cisco used us to measure communication and teamwork, the ATO, core employability and risk management. Sorry, I've jumped, haven't I? My apologies. That's not being able to do my own slides. So lessons learned from the assessors, the community practice, yeah, SME input into processes, both academic and operational. Also our industry assessors, so we're continually calibrating, and that's really good. Assessor online training modules we've put into place so that we can now keep new assessors in train and moving. And we've also built a assessor digital badge that we award after assessors have completed 20 assessments. And next year, we're going to have dynamic rubrics, which is also going to speed up and increase our capability in that space. Thank you. So in terms of new builds, in 2016, we looked at the industry pilots. I mentioned Cisco. They tested, ran for us communication and teamwork. We worked with the ATO, and they looked at the core employability credentials, so teamwork, collaboration, which is now collaboration, or communication, and they also looked at risk management. And Bupa helped us with customer experience and design thinking, and we were really able to calibrate, making sure that the criteria met the needs across those 5 different levels, although we actually implemented them across 3 levels, from a bachelor aligned through to a master's. And that really helped sort of then tease out refinements that were needed. Thank you. So 2020 capability. Lead credentials, which are leading and empowering others. Leading and developing people, empowering others, adaptive mindsets, and driving strategic results. They're offered as a cluster, and they've been established very firmly in a number of programs. So the Women Leadership Australia, in their advanced leadership program, they now have a pathway into MBAs. It's a 12-month executive program. And a lot of these women have no qualifications or an undergrad, and that was a very long time ago, and they really want to prove that they have moved on. So, you know, these form pathways for these particular groups work brilliantly, as with Quelly, Silver Chain and MyState. So I've concentrated sort of so far on the ways in which formal awards are being offered. But if we look at the next slide that shows us the industry influences on our capability builds, we've been working now for a number of years with Westpac, and they've helped build some cluster assessments around agility, which is a combination of customer experience, communication and teamwork. And now what we're finding from Westpac is, after several hundred assessments, now the employees are coming to us and actually asking us to assess them in other areas and paying for the experience themselves, because they're seeing the value of what it is. Some of them are choosing to go on to formal award, but a vast majority of them are wanting to show skill capability within a particular area, just for their own self-satisfaction and to be able to prove that they actually do have this skill set. We've worked very intensely with professional associations to build new credentials, data-driven content, creative and digital marketing, and data analytics and data science in particular. I put data science with an asterisk because we built that in 2018. It was still a really nascent type of skill, or what it would take across 5 different levels. So we had to park that for a little while, and we came back to it this year, and it's been dusted off, signed off by a number of industry experts, and is just due to be released. Thanks, Grant. So just going to Westpac, there's an industry validation talking about the ways in which they believe that it helps their staff demonstrate their transferable skills. And again, whether or not it's a standout from the crowd. That's the thing I like about that quote. It's not about formal award, non-formal award. It's about skill capability assessment and proving how you can stand out within the crowd. Thank you. So where are we now? Okay, so Westpac, we have just built for them an enterprise credential in risk management financial services to issue across their risk portfolios. And in fact, we're now partnering with another self-accrediting university to be able to provide assessment across 15,000 candidates over the next 2 years. So you can really see that ability to be able to benchmark against transparent criteria where people sit, and more importantly, what it is that's missing or what they need to develop in order to be able to go to the next level, is going to be a huge game changer, particularly across this corporation. Thanks. So, good old taxonomy. We've had a number of lessons learned in this space. You know, the colour, the shape. How do you, especially with our 5 levels, how do we differentiate against those levels? And how do we also differentiate against great different programs? And what does the
warning, Ashley, as well, sorry.
Sorry?
Sorry, 5-minute warning as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Next slide, please. So the these here you can see the different ways in which we differentiate. So same colours, but and you can see the badges down the bottom. So that shows that somebody has met the top level 5, so an expert in communications, and that, you know, it's backed by the university and is awarded. Whereas I mentioned the Deakin Credential Assessor badge, so that's a badge rather than something that, so it's been, you still proved skills capability, but it's not a formal award, and both of those are backed by a claim and formally credited. So very quick, so there's interest in the metadata. I'm assuming I can share these slides, so anything I'm now going to rush through, please, you know, feel free to take me up on questions later on. But basically that's the data that sits behind it, showing the criteria that's been met and when. And going back to the panelists, currency, in some of these credentials such as risk management, 2-year currency, and you then have to reapply to prove that you're still sitting at that level, or in fact that you've moved up to the next level. Whereas some of these will remain constant. Communication, for example, if you get the expert, then it's assumed that you will retain your expert levels. If you can pass on, please. So our systems, and I'm just going to talk very quickly about those. We've built a candidate student credential portal, a video testimony and an assessment portal. None of them were available. And next slide, please. We did a 2019 IT review, and there still was nothing that met our end-to-end requirements, and so consequently we launched a second version of our candidate that, as I mentioned, has reduced assessor time, and we've launched the asynchronous video testimony, which has been a real game changer. And now we're working on an assessment, in fact it's due to go live next week, which has actually reduced 80% of manual op requirements. Next, please. So we've added in now an introduction of Skills Hub portal to assist candidates choose the appropriate skills level across the credential suite. And it also, we've provided short course offerings that are aligned to the credentials to be able to allow candidates to skill uplift. Thanks. And they're offered through DeakinCo's LMS, Canvas, and also the OpenLearning platform. So we've had a really busy year. Lockdown has given us plenty of time to develop 120 short online skills capability uplift courses. And we have kicked off a foundation level professional readiness short course program across Deakin India that's proving remarkably successful. And in 2021, we had to put off our Australian schools pilot, but that's due to kick off in term 2 of 2021. Thank you. So what else have we got? I've mentioned the top 2. We're also building 2 new credentials with existing clients, and we're extending our current suite of short courses by 10%. And that is it. Thank you very, very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ashley. Gosh, you've achieved so much in 2020, and I know that hasn't come just out of the blue. There's been a hell of a lot of planning and design and everything that goes on behind that. So congratulations to all of you at DeakinCo. If you do want to see some of those open creds that are sitting up in the OpenLearning platform, if you go to openlearning.com and click on Open Creds, you'll actually see the DeakinCo ones there with the badges. And so on. So look, we're just running a little bit later on. We don't have time for any questions here, but we will take them offline, as we said before. Next session is in the panel sessions area, which is our next panel session. We'll jump across there very shortly and get underway. But on behalf of everyone at OpenLearning, Ash, thank you so much again for being part of today. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day yourself as well, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Grant.